Welcome to the Skeptic Zone, the podcast from Australia for science and reason.
Yes, it's the Skeptic Zone podcast, episode number 493 for the 1st of April 2018. Richard Saunders here with you from a very sunny, not a cloud in the sky, Sydney, Australia. And I'm just back from a wonderful 4 or 5 days in Melbourne, staying with my old buddy, my old mate, Dr. Steve Roberts from the Australian Skeptics. I flew down there to continue the Great Prediction Project because a lot of the magazines and reference materials that I needed to look at were in the State Library of Victoria. I've never been to the State Library of Victoria before, but I'm glad I did this time. A wonderful place, very interesting, good place for study and research, as you might expect. And Steve Roberts joined me for 3 solid days of research. We got there in the morning and just ploughed through with a break for lunch until the late evening for 3 days. And we ended up sorting through over 900 issues of a magazine called New Idea. And Australian listeners will be familiar with the New Idea magazine. Because in the pages of those magazines, apart from what your favourite celebrity is doing now, and what your favourite royal is doing now, and what's the latest scandal, and this sort of thing, dog stuck up a tree, were psychic predictions over the years. So-and-so the psychic says this is what's happening to this favourite royal or favourite celebrity, normally celebrities, year after year. Normally Nicole Kidman for some reason. Her name comes up a lot. Anyway, as part of this week's episode of the Skeptic Zone, a report on that process. As we go to the library, thumb through magazines and see what we can find out. Following that, it's a short piece from the Australian Skeptics website about the project I mentioned to you last week, where the Australian Skeptics have put up online every back issue of the magazine The Skeptic, the journal from Australian Skeptics, in PDF form. You might recall that for years we had most issues up there, but the first 10 years just selected articles. Now we have all issues. Apart from the last 4, which you need to look at via subscription. It's very cheap, though. Anyway, a little piece about that whole project from the Australian Skeptics website, where I get to quote myself, which is very odd. Then to round off the show, I chat to Dr. Steve Roberts in Melbourne about his UFO experiences over the years. Not that he's had real UFO experiences, but he has been one of the spokesmen about UFOs for many years from Australian Skeptics, and he gives us his opinion on why there's been such a dramatic decline in UFO stories and UFO interest really over the last 10 years. Then we read an item we also discovered in the library from a now defunct magazine or newspaper in Melbourne called The Truth, which was a very what we'd call now very trashy journal, sort of the journal that used to have page 3 girls and horse racing as the dominant reason for their existence, and scandalous news and things like that. Anyway, Steve Roberts was quoted in this because they ran a story about crop circles. Crop circles way back in 1989, so we'll read you out that story, which includes Steve's comments. So a bit of a different show this week, mostly because I was very busy and away from the Skeptic Zone studios to do research. As I mentioned at the top of the show, and as you fully know, it's April the 1st, April Fool's Day, which had me thinking, in years past it was such a big deal. An April Fool's gag. What's the April Fool's joke? I mean, I'm sure people still do it. But I seem to recall when I was younger, it was a much bigger deal. TV stations and radio stations especially would be broadcasting April Fool's jokes and trying to fool people. In the past, it was very notable. But now, you don't hear much about it, I don't think. Possibly because there have been cases of gags and stunts, especially pulled by radio stations, which have gone very wrong and led to tragic outcomes, sadly. So I guess this whole idea of gagging and fooling and trying to score points over people in that respect is waning in our culture. What do you think? Is this an April Fool's gag? Am I really trying to fool you? You can add your comments to the episode listing at Facebook, on the Skeptic Zone Facebook page. Links at skepticzone.tv. But now it's time for me to run downstairs, have some toast and cream cheese, and I'll try something different. During one of the lunch breaks in Melbourne, Dr. Steve Roberts and I went down Swanston Street, I think it was, found a lovely Japanese restaurant, very authentic, and on the table was a little grinder, a little mill with sesame seeds in it. And that was fantastic. So we were able to put ground up sesame seeds on our lunch order. So impressed were we hurried down the street after lunch, found the store selling them and bought a couple. So, run downstairs and grind my sesame seeds. While I do that, I hope you enjoy the Skeptic Zone. I'm stepping off the train here at Melbourne Central, and I'm with Skeptic Steve Roberts. Steve, we're making our way somehow in this maze. We're making our way to the State Library to continue researching the Great Prediction Project.
Yeah, we want that exit over there.
That exit, all right. It's very busy here in Melbourne today. Now, I've come to Melbourne because the State Library here in Melbourne has back issues of a magazine called New Idea, which I guess until recently would have been vaguely or generally categorized under the women's interest group of magazines, although these days I'm not sure if that's a term you would use. I think you get the idea. Other magazines like this include the Australian Women's Weekly, Women's Day magazine, and I guess there are various others over the years. But these magazines are the sort of magazines that have predictions, psychic columns. Every issue has a psychic, 2 or 3 psychic columns. But every now and then they will predict things. And we've gone way back to issues in 1999, and we're going right through the years to the present day. It's about a solid 3-day job, 2 of us poring over hundreds upon hundreds of issues of the magazine and extracting the pages, photographing the pages with the predictions. Just put my card on the machine here to get out. And then it's a matter of looking at those predictions, trying to make sense of them, putting them into the spreadsheet, and on we go. Hello, up here?
Yeah.
All right. Up this escalator. I must say I'm very impressed with the State Library of Victoria. I think it's a wonderful place. It's good for research and
Lovely old building, very historic.
yeah, and all you have to do is go online, which is quite easy. Oh, we've got someone coming up. And put in the magazines you're requesting, in this case, New Idea, the year and the months and so on. And 10 minutes later, they just appear magically on a shelf. We collect them and start pouring through them. It's a good system. But this is certainly a long project. I originally thought this project would just take me last year to do.
Yeah.
But as the project went on and hundreds of predictions came in through lots of research,
Yeah.
it's turning into a monster. Oh, wow. We're just coming up the escalators here at Melbourne Central train station beneath a glorious historical shot tower, which is now enclosed under a huge glass dome. It's quite impressive. It's beautiful. Oh well, on to the library. Now we've worked our way up to the street level here. There goes a Melbourne tram right in front of us. And there it is.
Yeah.
Directly across from the State Library of Victoria. Beautiful, glorious sunny day here in Melbourne.
With an escort of 4 police.
Oh yeah, look at all the police here. See, there's some perks to being a skeptic. You get to do strange things like come to Melbourne
Yeah.
to do research.
Well, you should come to Melbourne anyway.
They can come to Melbourne anyway. This is Swanston Street we're passing now, crossing over. We're holding up the trams, oh dear. All right.
It's our work of art there.
Steve's just pointing out a work of art to me here. It looks like
It might be sunk in the pavement.
a sunken plinth
Yeah.
right into the pavement there. All right. Let's walk past the statue, this impressive statue over here.
We've got St George and the Dragon.
There's St George and the Dragon statues. There's a Joan of Arc statue, which is odd.
A gift from the French.
There you go.
They probably have a surplus one.
A surplus Joan of Arc
I'm
statue.
sure they have spare ones. Yeah.
What are we going to do with this Joan of Arc statue? Oh, let's...
Give it to the Australians.
That's right. And, okay, we're walking up the main steps here now. Off the street, up into the library itself. There's a giant statue of Sir Redmond Barry. Very impressive. Noble-looking man. Some more steps. Joan of Arc is on our right, and St George and the Dragon are on our left. We're walking now under the giant columns to enter the front door of the library. Here we go. Into the through the glass door. Okay. Not many people. Yeah, it's just open. Yeah. Through the security gate there.
Waiting for us.
Yeah. Now we're walking through into the information centre, which is where they have the tables in the research area. Here we are. There's not too many people here at the moment, which is good. And let's see if we can find a good place to plonk ourselves.
Table's fine.
Yeah, table's fine. In fact, why don't we take that far table over there? It's near where the magazines are anyway. And right, oh, we're good. We've got a table to ourselves. If I walk back here to the shelf, nothing. Nothing. No, they're not waiting for us. Oh, these then.
They said it would be on the shelf.
Roberts. Here it is. Found it.
There?
Yeah. It's on the wrong shelf. But no. I'll take these 2 volumes. They're huge volumes. Bound in leather of all the back issues of the New Idea magazine. So, here we go. Let's see. So this one at random I've got is September to October 2006. Wow. So the process is you open the magazine, you go straight to the front page, you look at the front page to see if there's anything on it that says something along the lines of the psychic predictions for the year or something.
6 things, and one was a mistake.
Oh, okay. More yet. And then go to the index page. See, here we are, index page. There's about 3 or 4 pages in. And quickly scanning the whole index. If anything jumps out like psychic predictions or UFOs or monsters or anything like that, we have a look at that page. Otherwise, it's straight to the back section, which is normally after page 100. Here in the index it says Your Spirit, Psychic Answers and Weekly Stars. And it's always worth looking at that quickly, because sometimes predictions for celebrities pop up there and other things like that. And once we find something we want, photograph, and it's labelled so we know who made the prediction and when, and so on and so on. Well, Steve, we've got a day's work ahead of us.
I ordered that 1945 one again by accident.
You ordered the 1945 magazine? All right, that'll help.
It's the first line of it.
Well, we're a couple of hours into it this morning. Not too many things are coming up. The odd prediction here and there, the odd story involving psychics. But one of the current people contributing to the issues in, where are we? 2007. I have no idea we're looking at is an astrologer by the name of Karen Morgold. And most of her stuff's pretty lightweight, I suppose. Scorpio, for example. You'll have to think on your feet, respond in the moment, and avoid trying to plan too far ahead with an unusual undertaking or issue with your children. This sort of stuff, very nondescript. But she does make celebrity predictions, but most of them are unusable because they're more like personality readings, really. Here's a good example. This is from August 2007. Her predictions for Michael Jackson. Intense, obsessive, erratic, secretive. Born on August the 29th, 1958, Michael Jackson has a horoscope that's a blend of extreme elements reflecting the complexity, originality, and contradictions in his nature. He has flashes of genius and grand visions, but reality and imagination also become blurred. His gentle moon in Pisces really doesn't want to hurt anyone or anything. So I'm not even going to bother adding that to the catalogue because that's... what can you do with that? It's completely vague. But that's a problem with a lot of these so-called predictions. Oh well, many more pages to go. Contrary to popular belief, not all libraries are quiet. This one seems to tolerate a certain amount of talking and noise, which is okay. It's not too distracting. There's a tour guide in here at the moment, so the tour guide is busily telling everybody about the wonders of the library. I was just looking through all these magazines, and of course one of the regular features under the Psychics and Clairvoyant Directory section are all the ads. The paid advertising for mostly, almost exclusively, I think, dial-up psychic lines. Absolute soul secrets. 24 hours for your convenience. Psychic readings with Archangel Michael. Yeah, that's pretty exclusive, isn't it? Destiny's Spiritual Psychics, International World-Class Psychics. Although the word psychic is spelled psychic with an apostrophe S at the end. International World-Class Psychic apostrophe S. Figure that one out. Melissa's Genuine Psychics. Oh, I'm glad she's letting us know they're genuine. Christopher's Angelic Mediums. Another one, Psychic Secrets Unbelievable, from only $1.95 a minute. Well, it's more expensive than that now. Here's another one, Current Top 10 Clairvoyants in Australia, whoever they were or are.
Holy Vedic of Victoria.
A break in our study, our research brings us to the top level of the library, which is much bigger than I thought. The library is huge. Where they have on display here behind this glass cabinet is the actual armour worn by Ned Kelly. Ned Kelly is the actual armour worn by Ned Kelly. Ned Kelly's armour right in front of us with a boot.
Yeah, he won. He had to hop.
He had to. He was certainly caught on the hop. And we can see where the armour has bullet marks from the police firing at him. It's quite interesting to see this suit of armour because being Australian, you sort of know about this all your life, Ned Kelly and his suit of armour, but to see the real thing. An unexpected surprise here at the Melbourne, the State Library of Victoria in Melbourne. It's many hours later. It's nearly 6 o'clock in the evening. We've lost count of how many issues we've gone through. We've ordered all the remaining ones we need on a trolley, and there are many to go through yet. We're somewhere in the middle of the year 2011 at the moment. And we noticed that now this magazine, New Idea, have hired Alison Devoir and John Edward. to give advice, and they also have a destiny page, and this is an interesting one. Wills and Kate, lines don't lie. It's all about their palm prints. I suppose they wave enough, so they got photographs.
It's interesting to see the different psychics come and go from the magazine. Their columns get smaller and smaller, and they finally vanish,
Yeah, and some come for a few issues and disappear. That's interesting. And a survey. I have met a ghost. On we go. Done for the day. Out we go through the same doorway, under the same columns. The sun's going down. St. George and Joan of Arc are still there, and the skateboarders are skating past. So it's not bad doing skeptical research, Steve. It's interesting.
Oh, it's good fun, yeah. You get to go out in nice places in Melbourne and have a nice lunch and look through New Idea magazine, read all about Tom Cruise.
And Nicole Kidman, and Prince William, and Kate, and Camilla, and all the normal...
Well, actually, there's only about 20 or 30 people who ever figure in it. The same people come round and round.
Yeah.
I think they're the people they know the phone numbers of.
I think you're right. And now it's time to go home and crack open a nice bottle of red, I reckon.
Yeah. To the strains of Marcus the Busker. Hello, Marcus. He's stopped now.
Dr. Harriet Hall, MD, known to thousands as the Skepdoc, a retired family physician and former Air Force flight surgeon. She writes about medicine, so-called complementary and alternative medicine, science, quackery, and critical thinking. Harriet now has a free course, a series of 10 video lectures on science-based medicine and alternative medicine. The videos and an accompanying course guide can be found by following the link at skepdoc.info or by visiting web.randy.org/educational-modules.html. Topics covered in the series are science-based medicine versus evidence-based medicine, what is CAM, chiropractic, acupuncture, homeopathy, naturopathy and herbal medicine, energy medicine, miscellaneous alternatives, pitfalls in research, and science-based medicine in the media and politics. Harriet covers each topic in a matter-of-fact, no-nonsense way that's sure to educate and entertain. Skepdoc.info.
You might remember last week I told you of the project by the Australian Skeptics to digitise and publish all the back issues of the magazine, The Skeptic, the journal from Australian Skeptics. Quite a long process. I really started way back in 2001 when I digitised many issues that were available then for something called the Great Skeptic CD. All very new and cutting stuff way back in 2001. And here is a little news item that's just appeared on the Skeptics website at skeptics.com.au. Skeptic magazine back issues, online and free. Australian Skeptics has digitised all the back issues of The Skeptic magazine, going back to its first issue in 1981. And these are now available for free download from the magazine page of the Australian Skeptics website. The only exceptions are the most recent 4 issues, which are kept exclusively for subscribers, although sample articles from even those issues are also available. This is the result of a concerted effort by Australian Skeptics Inc. and we believe that offering complete back issues of virtually the entire run of a skeptical publication for free is unique in the skeptical community. Richard Saunders, committee member and former president of Australian Skeptics, was instrumental in digitising the printed issues, along with current President Eran Segev. Quote, "The magazine is the second oldest English-speaking skeptical magazine in the world," end quote, Saunders says. It's funny to quote myself. Quote, "It was a pretty basic production in the first years, with literally cut and paste photocopy by a dedicated crew of volunteers. We're happy to say that the process has improved dramatically over the years through increasingly sophisticated publishing technology. Cleaning up all the printing and production imperfections of those early issues has been a long process. In some cases, it meant finding new copies of the photography and clippings that were used as illustrations, which has been a time-consuming job, albeit a labour of love," end quote. Readers can now see how the skeptical movement in Australia has developed over 4 decades as reflected in the pages of the magazine. From health and medicine to psychics and clairvoyance, yowies, cults, pseudoscience and the paranormal, there is a wealth of information in the 144 issues now available. In addition to the individual issues, there are 2 compendium publications, In the Beginning and The Second Coming, which collated articles from the first 10 years of The Skeptic according to a number of themes, each of which is available separately. Of course, The Skeptic continues to be published every quarter, and readers can subscribe to coming new issues via our online shop, although you will have to pay for those. And as I mentioned last week, what I've done is I've put all those back issues on my iPad. And on a recent flight down to Melbourne, I was able to sit back and just thumb through many, many articles and stories. The Skeptic Magazine, the journal from Australian Skeptics. Subscribe online to the world's second oldest skeptical magazine. Visit www.skeptics.com.au and click the publications link. You can also find there over 30 years of back issues free to download. The Skeptic, the magazine from Australian Skeptics. On my recent trip to Melbourne, I took time out to interview Dr. Steve Roberts. For many years, continuing the Australian Skeptic spokesman on matters revolving around UFOs and strange phenomena like that. And we chatted about his UFO experiences over the years. I took the opportunity to interview Dr. Steve for an archival project the Australian Skeptics are doing at the moment, where we video prominent members of the organisation to get on record their thoughts and opinions and their recollections of the early days of the organisation. Following that, I'll read out the item we discovered from the Truth magazine way back in 1989. But here's Dr. Steve Roberts.
Are we on again?
Yeah.
Ah!
That'll be cut out.
Beep! Yeah.
So you've got the reputation of being the Australian Skeptics UFO expert.
Yeah, other people claim that. How can somebody be an expert on something that's unknown? You know? But yeah, I mean, I was a UFO believer when I was a kid. I fess up on this. I thought there was something going on. I had a respect for books, and you can get UFO books. You could at the time, you certainly can now. And I thought if somebody did a book, it's true. You know, and I thought there was something happening. And if you don't chase up the legends too far, you can believe them. You know. Now the problem was we had a group at my university that was studying this. We sort of got hold of all the UFO sightings we got hold of the British archives of UFO sightings, and well, for a start, for 6 years of archives, there was about that much paper. And we said, well, where's the rest of it? I said, well, that's it. That's what there is. He thought this whole UFO story comes on 100 sightings, of which about 80 are clearly just garbage, fuzzy lights or a funny feeling or something. And some had some guts in them. But there were none of the famous sightings in there that came up later on.
So you had this interest long before you came to Australia?
Oh, yeah, I was 15, And I thought there was something going on, so we thought we'd study it. We got together at uni, as I say, and the big mistake was we looked at the evidence. Firstly, wasn't much evidence, and secondly, what there was not very good. And we went to some UFO meetings of the UFO Research Association. There were some strange people at these meetings, and we all became sceptical. We weren't to start with. They had a bloke who'd seen a Loch Ness Monster. He had a film of it. It's fairly plausible, this film. Tim Dinsdale. And we saw the film. It could be the Loch Ness Monster, but then a number of questions arise. Like what does it eat, and is there more than one? And why haven't we got other films, and and so on. But could this be something else? What is the object really? It turned out to be an otter, basically. Closer to the camera than you think. It was an otter. But yeah, we became sceptical. It was long before the skeptics were invented. So when I hear a UFO sighting, you think, well, is it more likely that there are aliens flying around the Earth doing things, or more like that somebody just misinterpreted what he saw? So the thing is, to be sceptical of UFOs, you have to learn all the stories. There was a sighting in Rendlesham Forest in 1980. You have to know what that was and where it was and what it was like and what the explanation is. The wacko story of it, and the believer story, and the scientific fact of it. Jimmy Carter saw a UFO. This is true. There's an explanation which is not well known, but there is an explanation of what he saw. And you have to learn all that. And when you talk to these people, it's like talking to Gish about creationism. They say, what about this one? And what about this? And you have to know all these. Say, well, that was a hoaxer. That was somebody misidentifying. That was something. Oh, what about this one? Oh, I don't know about that one. Oh, you don't know about that one? Oh, well, now I've got the upper edge, you say. This is proof that there's UFOs, and you don't know, and you get sunk. So you have to learn all this arbitrary stuff. That's how I became the UFO expert.
So not long after you joined the Australian Skeptics in Canberra, then Melbourne, you were called upon by the Skeptics to represent them when the media came calling.
Other people did as well. Colin Kay, the professor of astronomy, he was active in that. William Gray could handle it. Barry Williams could handle it.
Yeah.
It depends which town you're in. And Barry's in Sydney. Colin Kay was in Newcastle. I was in Melbourne. I got into telly a couple of times and was called up a couple of times, or eventually got passed to me. And UFO stories now are just, you can interpret each one as they come in.
They don't come in often.
Very, very rarely indeed now, because people have mobile phones with cameras in them, or mobile phones, and that just killed it.
Now, the other day you and I were in the library here in Melbourne, and we were going through old issues of a newspaper called The Truth, or the Melbourne Truth.
The Melbourne Truth, yeah.
And which was really a bit trashy magazine for horse racing and
pornography and
like
what's it called? Hysterical news,
Hysterical news.
Aliens ate my baby.
That sort of stuff. Well, not quite. We say pornography, but they had topless models in it and things like that.
Yeah.
But it was a popular newspaper at the time, and you were called in because there was a crop circle. What can you tell me about that story?
All right. There was a fad for crop circles in Britain, summer of 1989. And a few before that, not many, but it got bigger and bigger in the summer. And 1990 it was huge, and it got even huger. Only in Wiltshire in Britain, which is hilly and hot and dry and has crops, which in August, which is the height of the summer, the crop's standing and you can bend the stalks over easily and make a pattern in it, and then go up a hill nearby and look at it, film it. And these circles were appearing left, right and centre. The farmer gets apoplectic, but until he realises he can put up a sign that says "See the crop circle, £5," and he gets more money than the crop is worth. It saves him having to harvest it. There were crop circle fans. Colin Andrews, noticeably, who's still out there, still trying to believe in them. Eventually, two old men confessed to forging most of them, and other people copied. There's at least 20 groups in Britain now, I think, making crop circles. They meet in the same pub. Probably a fight starts, And one appeared in Australia. I mean, we all like our own story, so
this is 1989.
1989, yeah.
One crop circle appeared. Where was that?
It was in the town, in the Mallee in Western Victoria. Actually, there were 5 circles that appeared. The article said 5 had appeared. There was a picture of the farmer standing in one of them, which was about the size of half the size of this room. About 4 metres across.
4 metres, 10 feet across.
Yes, right. Yeah, standing in that, and it's looking like, I don't know, it could have just arisen from somebody doing a U-turn with a 4-wheeled quad bike or something, or somebody just made it for a laugh.
So it was just a circle, not complex or anything.
No, just a circle.
Just a circle.
And the article said there were 5, and also the farmer had seen a bright yellow light, and also water had gone missing from the farmer's water tank. This turned out to be 2 years before, and the yellow light was 6 weeks later. And water goes missing. I thought that tank was full. Well, it's empty now. Maybe somebody left the tap on and didn't fess up to it. This happens a lot on farms, But you make an article out of it. And I saw this in The Truth, or it was brought to my attention. And I rang them up and said, well, this is just, nothing to shout about, really. There's no evidence except the circle that it was a UFO. Not, UFO lands on farm as the headliner said.
Because when you say you saw it in The Truth, it was on the front page.
Yeah, all over the front page.
Yeah, so it caught your attention.
Yeah, and I said, well, there's no evidence it was a UFO. It could just be somebody else.
You contacted the reporter?
Yeah, John Pinckney, who was famous for digging up stories like this, and had just joined The Truth at the time. And they had articles say, well, what would Stephen Roberts know about it? You've never made a crop circle. And in fact, I have, but I didn't bother replying to all this. They said, well, I've seen it and you haven't. You've never made one, the way you say it could be done. Well, I have, But why argue, it sells newspapers. So, yeah, that came and went, that story. But I saw the farmer come to a convention of crop circle fans. There were 400 people in a room. Colin Andrews giving a talk, and the farmer, who was a female, was brought in after everyone was seated. The farmer who'd been flown down from the Mallee to Melbourne and wined and dined came in very attractively coiffed and made up and wearing a fur coat, and you could sense the reverence in the room as if the Queen of England had come in, which was a similar experience. And she was treated with enormous respect because she had this crop circle on her farm, And I did say to her afterwards, I said, if you like, I can give you the name and address of the man who made your crop circle. She said, no, I'd rather not find that out, actually. I like things the way they are, thank you. I like the fur coat and the front seat,
So that was 1989.
Yeah.
But UFOs were still popular for a while, but when do you think did you notice the decline in the popularity and reporting? Does it really tie in that closely with mobile phones?
Yeah. 1993 onwards, there were mobile phones available to the common man. There were phones in cars in 1990. The phone was so big you could only imagine it in a car. And we had one at work. It was a heavy briefcase, 20 kilograms, with the phone in it. And in 1993, there began to be phones you could actually carry on your person. Okay, and there was an advert for it by Telstra. So it showed somebody in a field with a UFO, and he had a phone, and they were saying, "Quick, tell somebody."
Yeah.
And that's the phenomenon just died overnight, because suddenly people had these phones. They couldn't take pictures, but you could ring somebody up and say, "Mum, there's a UFO above my head now," or whatever. "Come here, quick," or something. And then, of course, later they had cameras in the phone, so now everybody has a camera.
Yeah.
And UFOs have just died out.
You're not contacted anymore by media about UFOs, are you?
I am, but there's no UFOs. Somebody sets fire to a garbage bag. You take the garbage sack and hold it upside down and set fire to the bottom. It'll fill with hot air and float off. There's your UFO. It gets in the media.
No, well, the one I remember you did comment on was, we're talking 10, 12 years ago, was the Beveridge UFO.
Yeah.
Now, just for the sake of reminding people, what was that story?
That was in January 2004. January, anyway, which is the height of summer down here. And one of the council engineers has to go out every year and photograph the level crossing working. Okay, they take a film when the train comes, showing the booms come up and down, showing all the lights flashing. And they then have a record that the crossing was working on that day. And every year he has to go and film the level crossing boom working. And there he is filming his boom going up and down. And woo, 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 woo. Across goes this UFO. And
that was a still picture, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was a JPEG. He took JPEG. And I have the original picture. So suddenly, I have the original seminal evidence myself. I have the JPEG picture. And that's all there is, because normally you get a copy of a copy of a copy. And you think, well, the original is going to be better. But now I've actually got the original. And there is a black object flying with a little white tail.
Yeah.
Now, if you go there at the height of the summer and you interview people, they're always doing that.
Shooing the flies
There's
away.
Flies everywhere,
Yes,
yeah.
yes.
And lo and behold, a fly goes in front of the camera, and that's why the UFO's out of focus and the level crossing's in focus, and the size all matches up, everything's right for a fly about 3 feet from the lens going across. And of course your face is behind the camera, so you actually wouldn't see it. You wouldn't see the fly.
Well, the guy said at the time he didn't see anything in the sky, but when he looked at the photograph, there it was.
That's right, only at the photo. So then what is the story? What's the backstory of the sighting? For every UFO picture, you have this UFO picture. And there's got to be a story. You say, well, did you see it? Did you hear a noise? Were other people there? What were you doing? Why were you taking photographs in the sky? Did you have to go and get the camera? What is the story? It's kind of odd that just when you've got the camera ready and you're pointing it at the sky, a UFO comes across. It
was popular. It made the news. It made the TV.
It filled a spot on the news. Yeah.
Yes.
Otherwise, it's man bites dog, or latest scam with Australian cricketer polishes cricket ball.
That's right.
You need short of news. Look, UFOs are cute, and no one's ever been harmed by a UFO. I mean, abductees say they have, but no one's been killed by a UFO. Nobody's flown an aeroplane into a skyscraper because of UFOs.
Yeah. Now, they're a great story. It's one of the reasons that I got involved, because I love that sort of stuff.
Yeah, that's all very bucolic. Unfortunately, sort of skepticism has become nasty in later years because there's nastier targets than flying saucers and astrologers. But I rather miss those days. When that was the only bad news there was.
From the Weekend Truth newspaper, dated the 16th of December, 1989. Scared Aussie family tells Truth's John Pinkley UFO lands on farm. World exclusive photos. A giant UFO left this mysterious circle of flattened wheat and 4 others like it on a Western Victorian farm, according to frightened locals. They tell of sightings, sounds and terrified livestock. Full story, more photos inside. In fact, this is the front page of the newspaper. Only cost $1.20. And the picture shows a lady standing on the edge of a crop circle, which is about 4 meters in diameter. We turn to page 4. UFO landing mystery. Sheep panicked by eerie light in the fields. Exclusive report by John Pinkley. 3 frightened farmers believe a gigantic UFO landed last week on their Victorian wheat property. A pattern of 5 perfect circles, in which unbroken wheat stalks swirl anti-clockwise, have been found on the 9,000-hectare farm, West Park, run by Max and Nancy Jolly and their son Stuart, aged 29. The startling discovery comes only 4 weeks after the family's 700 sheep were panicked by a huge yellow object pulsating above the paddocks in Western Victoria's Mallee region. First to notice the uncanny, quote, landing rings, end quote, were Jolly's neighbours Brian Finch and Austin Grace. Quote, they'd brought in an international combine harvester onto our property to strip wheat, end quote, Nancy Jolly told me. Quote, sitting in an elevated cabin about 5 meters above the ground, they spotted what everyone else had missed. 2 large swirled circles of wheat about 3 meters in diameter, surrounded by 3 smaller circles, each of about 1 meter. Obviously something exerting colossal force has set down there. Outside the circles you can scratch dirt up with your fingers. but inside the ground is increasingly compressed, like cement. The wheat appears to be woven, almost like a straw basket. The stalks are quite amazingly undamaged, with the grain fully matured in the heads, which suggests the landing might have occurred sometime last week, end quote. The mind-blowing circle's discovery climaxes 2 years of mystery and fear for the Jolly family. In November 1987, following sightings of eerie aerial lights, Nancy found that the farmhouse's 40,000-litre water tank had been totally drained overnight. Quote, "We haven't a clue what happened," end quote, she said. Quote, "All we know is someone, or something, took every drop of our water," end quote. In 1981, I investigated several similar cases of UFO-related water disappearances. All were in northern Victoria. In December 1988, Stuart Jolly was shocked from sleep by a shattering noise outside his bedroom window. Subheading, Berserk. Quote, "I thought the racket would puncture my eardrums," end quote, he recalled. "It was like the scream of jet engines revving up and down with the shrilling of thousands of cicadas mixed in. My dog would normally have been on the spot and barking, but he seemed to have shot through." And just for international listeners, shot through means disappeared more or less, or run away. "I rushed outside but saw nothing. The racket seemed to be coming from empty sky." The Jollies endured an even more bizarre brush with the unknown in August this year. Quote, "About 9 o'clock one night I heard a commotion and went out to see what was happening," end quote, Stewart said. Quote, "The trouble was centred on a sheep paddock. Our 700 ewes and lambs had gone berserk. They were dashing around and bleating in total panic. And then I saw why. Hovering above the paddock was a huge yellow light that seemed to be pulsating. At first I thought someone was spotlighting our sheep, but then I realised the light was far too big for that. Also, it was making a weird, high-pitched noise, like the blades of a helicopter, with its engines off and slowing. I'd never seen sheep go wild in that way before. If a dog had been threatening them, they simply would have huddled together, reasonably calm and disciplined. But this mob were stumbling all over the paddock. I could see it was the light and the noise that were driving them crazy. After a few more minutes of chaos, the light started to move. Foolishly, perhaps, I got into the car to chase it, but before I could start up, it vanished behind the pine trees." Quote, "We went out with torches," and again that means flashlights. "We went out with torches and were amazed to find a wedged-tailed eagle with a wingspan of about 2 meters stumbling around in the paddock, seemingly in shock." And this was the story that Steve Roberts, who you just heard, saw in the Truth newspaper and contacted the reporter. And a few days later, in fact, on December the 23rd, there was a follow-up. Again, we have the same picture of the crop circle and the headline, "Skeptic, UFO proof hasn't cropped up." Story by Rick Turner. Flattened crop circles found recently in a Victorian wheat crop could have been made by a man or men with a stick, according to Australian Skeptics. Stephen Roberts, Melbourne UFO spokesman for Australian Skeptics, contacted Truth after our world-exclusive story reported possible UFO activity that has frightened farmers in Western Victoria's Mallee district. Our report featured pictures of large circles of wheat flattened in an anti-clockwise direction, possibly where a craft landed, and told of water tanks mysteriously emptied. Wheat farmers Max and Nancy Jolly and their son Stuart believe a gigantic UFO landed on their 9,000-hectare property earlier this month and claim the landing climaxes 2 years of UFO activity in the area. In August this year, sheep on the farm were terrified by a large orb of yellow light that hovered above them before speeding off.
In November 1987, following sightings of eerie aerial lights, Nancy Jolly found the farmhouse's 40,000-litre water tank had totally drained. Quote, "Nonsense," end quote, said Mr. Roberts, a Melbourne computer systems analyst with a PhD in chemistry. Quote, "Water doesn't get sucked up by UFOs, and it only disappears from a tank when somebody steals it or the tank springs a leak. What would a spacecraft do with thousands of gallons of water? A water-propelled spacecraft? I don't think so. Where's the hard evidence of a UFO? There have been so many of these circle markings found that surely there would be some hard evidence by now. The thing that makes these marks is never seen. We widely believe these strange circles are made by men with a stick, and even the largest ones could have easily been made in about half an hour." End quote. Mr. Roberts said claims of UFO activity gained credence because, quote, "people really want to believe in UFOs. I would like to believe in UFOs and make contact with other beings myself, but until there is some hard evidence and a fuzzy photograph or a patch of ground that anyone could have trampled just isn't good enough, we have to conclude the obvious. There are no UFOs," end quote. And we have a reply by the original reporter, Pinkley. It says, "Pinkley, how would you know?" Truth writer John Pinkley, Australia's most famous UFO investigator, has challenged Mr. Roberts, or anyone else, to duplicate the circles found in Jolly's wheat farm. Quote, "It can't be done by humans because you can't bend wheat over like that when it comes close to harvest," end quote, Mr. Pinkley said. Quote, "The stalks snap, and that is the amazing thing with all these circles. Not a single stalk is ever snapped. We have proven it can't be done. Unlike Mr. Roberts, we have taken the trouble to study these circles and to conduct some tests," end quote. Mr. Pinkley said there have been dozens of similar circles turning up all over Victoria and reports from all over the world of huge amounts of stored water disappearing during UFO activity. And that story originally published in the Truth newspaper, now defunct, in December 1989. And this was discovered as we were conducting research at the State Library of Victoria. And this was all coming off the archives of microfilm. A great yarn from years ago.
Hi, this is Ben Radford.
And this is Pasquale Romero from the Squaring the Strange podcast.
Every week, my co-host and I cast a skeptical eye at a different topic.
Monsters, ghosts, demons, mysteries, and even current events are dissected and discussed with a fun, unscripted, and skeptical take that you're sure to enjoy.
Find us at squaringthestrange.com, iTunes, or on your favorite podcast platform.
Thank you for listening to the Skeptic Zone, and a big, big thank you to Dr. Steve Roberts and his wife Barbara for having me stay over in their house, and a big thank you to Steve especially for coming in with me every day to the library to help me with this research. Between the two of us, it meant we got through everything doubly quick. I guess I would have been there for many more days to get through everything, but with Steve Roberts by my side getting through these issues of the magazine, we got the job done, which meant thumbing through the magazine, looking at the content pages, and photographing the articles in question. And in the end, we had in the order of 240 items that we archived. Now they have to be put into a spreadsheet and analysed, and, well, the project goes on. And as I mentioned last week, I might be asking for help sometime this year from listeners to help with that project. Stay tuned. But for this week, this is Richard Saunders signing off from Sydney, Australia. You've been listening to the Skeptic Zone podcast. Please visit our website at www.skepticzone.tv for show notes, contacts, and to access the back catalogue of episodes going back to 2008. You can follow the Skeptic Zone podcast on Twitter at Skeptic Zone, visit our Facebook page, or leave a review on iTunes. You can also support the Skeptic Zone via Patreon or PayPal. The Skeptic Zone podcast is an independent production. The views and opinions expressed on the Skeptic Zone are not necessarily those of Australian Skeptics or any other skeptical organisation.